Have you ever wondered about mysterious artifacts that seem almost alive, hiding secrets we may never understand? Welcome to Unearthed Secrets, where we reveal the hidden stories of the world's most extraordinary relics. Before we begin, please subscribe, like, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let's begin. The disc that carried the sun. In the heart of Anatolia, where stone cliffs rise like ancient guardians and valleys lie heavy with forgotten whispers, there once gleamed an artifact so radiant it seemed less crafted by mortal hands and more born from the very heavens. It was no mere ornament, no idle relic. It was a disc, circular, unbroken, eternal, hammered from bronze and adorned with gold, a mirror to the very star that ruled the skies. For the Hittites, it was not simply a symbol, it was the sun made tangible, an object that seemed to carry light itself, the sun disk. The Hittite Empire thrived in a land of fierce seasons. Winters froze the highlands, while summers scorched fields until the soil cracked open. Between these extremes, life depended on balance, on the eternal cycles of light and dark, death and rebirth. It was no wonder then that the Hittites turned their gaze to the sun, the force that dictated harvests, growth, and survival. But they did more than worship its distant glow. They sought to bring it down to earth, to shape it into a form their hands could hold, their priests could lift, their kings could swear upon. That form was the disk. The capital of Hattusa bore witness to these ceremonies. Imagine standing among its colossal gates, passing between lions carved in stone, their faces worn smooth by centuries of wind. Beyond, in a sacred court, the people gathered. Farmers in rough wool, soldiers with bronze blades at their hips, nobles robed in finery. Their eyes turned upward not only to the dawn, but to the figure of the priest or king, who raised high the gleaming circle. Bronze caught fire in the light, blazing brighter than the torches flickering below. In that moment, all eyes saw the same truth. The gods had come down among them. The disk itself was deceptively simple, yet endlessly complex. Some were ringed with spokes, radiating lines like captured sunlight. Others bore horns curling outward, echoes of the bull, symbol of strength and fertility. Still others carried wings, stretched as though mid-flight, connecting the sun to the freedom of the skies. Archaeologists who unearthed them describe each as unique, as though no two could fully capture the same idea of divinity. The Hittites, it seems, did not see the disk as a singular image but as a living concept, fluid and changeable, like the sun itself. And yet what rituals were performed before it? What words were spoken? The stone tablets of Hittite scribes tell us fragments, oaths sworn, invocations made, names of gods chanted in slow rhythm. In treaties with neighboring empires, kings invoked the sun goddess of Arena, placing their honor under her watchful gaze. The disk, resting nearby, bore silent witness, a divine judge without words. When armies marched, it may have gone with them, carried into the chaos of battle as a guarantee that the sun itself guided their cause. When fields were planted, perhaps the disk was lifted, imploring the heavens for rain. The Hittites believed the goddess of the sun did more than shine. She kept order itself. She was the balance between chaos and harmony, the divine flame that watched not only over crops and seasons, but over justice, treaties, and the promises of men. The disk was her earthly shadow, a vessel through which mortals might touch what was otherwise untouchable. To betray an oath sworn before the disk was to betray the cosmos itself, a crime thought to bring disaster upon entire kingdoms. Imagine the weight of that belief. To a modern eye, it is a work of bronze, but to a Hittite, to look upon it was to see a fragment of eternity. Picture the hush as a ruler held it aloft. The crowd below, thousands of faces, fell silent. Children clutched their mothers' garments. Soldiers bowed their heads. Even the wind seemed to pause. And then, as the sun's first rays touched the horizon, the disk blazed, not with fire, not with magic, but with the natural brilliance of dawn caught in its form. Yet in that still moment, natural light became divine light. The line between object and God blurred until no difference remained. When the Hittite Empire fell, the disk did not. The palaces of Hattusa crumbled, the walls were swallowed by earth, and clay tablets shattered in the soil, but the circular emblem lived on. Later Anatolian cultures carried echoes of it, perhaps without even knowing its origins. And even today, in modern Turkey, the sun disk endures as a symbol, woven into civic emblems and national pride. It is as though the artifact, though silent, continued whispering across millennia, its shape too eternal to vanish. Yet mystery clings to it still. Some disks were found in tombs, buried with the dead as if to light their way into eternity. Others were unearthed in temples, their surfaces scarred by centuries of handling, as though countless hands had traced their outlines in devotion. A few remain enigmatic, their designs unlike any known ritual symbols, suggesting meanings long forgotten. Did they serve as guides for the soul, as markers of divine authority, as vessels for prayer? Or were they all of these at once? Archaeologists describe a strange experience when standing before them. Even behind glass in museum halls, the discs command attention. The circle draws the eye inward, the reflections play upon the mind, and one feels as though staring not just at metal, but at a symbol that resonates on some ancient, universal level. The circle, after all, is older than writing, older than agriculture, older than cities. It is the first form drawn into sand, the first shape traced by firelight in cave walls. The Hittites merely gave it form in bronze and entrusted it with their gods. There is also something haunting about its endurance. Empires rose and fell, Assyrians, Persians, Greeks, Romans. Yet the disk's shape remains instantly recognizable. Perhaps that is why it feels alive, as though it carries not only the sun but memory itself. The Hittite priests are long gone, their chants lost to time, but the light still falls upon the disk, and it still gleams. One cannot help but wonder if, in some way, the rituals continue through our gaze. If the simple act of looking is enough to awaken echoes of devotion long past. Legends tell us that some Hittite rulers believed themselves chosen by the sun goddess of Irina, her will embodied in their reign. When they faltered, when they betrayed her balance, famine struck, wars were lost, empires collapsed. Perhaps it was not politics alone that doomed them, but the conviction that the goddess had turned her face away. The disk, once radiant in ceremony, may have seemed dim, its light no longer blessing but condemning. For an object so bound to faith, its silence in times of ruin must have felt deafening. And still, the disk survives. Not in myth alone, not in half-remembered stories, but in metal, in form, in light. In its presence questions arise that may never find answers. Was it only a symbol, or something more? Did the Hittites see in it the sun, or did they somehow, through centuries of ritual, infuse it with a spark of the divine? The artifact does not explain itself. It only gleams, unbroken, unchanged. Stand before it, and you will see what the Hittites saw. Not just a circle, not just a piece of bronze, but a presence. It is the same sun they worshipped, the same fire they believed carried justice and life. It is as though the disk did not simply represent the sun, but truly carried it, across centuries, across empires, into our present. And perhaps, so long as eyes fall upon it, it will never set. The pendant that sang in silence. The jungle breathes differently at night. Leaves glisten with dampness, and the canopy above closes the sky like a heavy lid. Somewhere deep in the green heart of southern Mexico, long before the world became what we know today, an artisan bent low over a stone no bigger than his hand. He chipped carefully, each stroke against the raw jade carrying more weight than words ever could. This was no ordinary pendant, for in its polished green surface lay the whispers of a people we now call the Olmec, a civilization old enough that its very beginnings blur with myth. And within that smooth, cool jade they claimed to hear a voice, not one that spoke in words, but one that sang in silence. To understand the pendant is to step backward into a world without iron, without wheels, without written records to anchor its truths. The Olmecs, flourishing between 1200 and 400 BCE, lived in the humid lowlands of the Gulf Coast, where rivers curled like snakes and the earth itself seemed to exhale with fertility. Their colossal stone heads, carved from volcanic basalt, still gaze across the land with silent, unblinking eyes. But beyond the monuments, beyond the lingering outlines of ceremonial centers, small things, like a pendant of jade, carried a weight that often outshone the giants. Jade was not native to Olmec heartlands. It had to be brought from far-off quarries in the mountains of Guatemala, carried on the backs of traders who walked through forests, rivers, and hostile terrain. To hold jade in one's hand was to hold the distant earth itself, green, translucent, and impossibly hard. Its color mirrored the lifeblood of maize leaves, the fertile promise of crops and the eternal cycle of rain. The Olmecs believed jade was alive, cold to the touch, yet breathing, silent, yet singing. And when carved into a pendant that could rest against the skin, it became a bridge between the human heart and the breath of gods. Imagine then the pendant in question, a smooth oval, carved with patterns that seemed both abstract and alive. Swirls like water, jagged cuts like lightning, soft arcs that echoed the curve of the horizon. It might have been worn by a priest as he stood before the altar, the jade pressed against his chest as incense curled into the dawn, or perhaps by a ruler, whose authority was not secured by armies, but by symbols powerful enough to command belief. Each time the pendant struck lightly against bone, it carried a sound no one else could hear, a hum beneath the world, a silence that was somehow song. Archaeologists who uncovered such pendants described them as objects of impossible craftsmanship. Without metal tools, the Olmecs shaped jade through patience and sand, grinding for months to coax out polish and form. The effort alone was a prayer. Each groove cut into the pendant's face was not decoration but invocation. Spirals might echo wind, or water, or the eternal motion of the cosmos. Cross-hatched lines could represent maize fields, promising sustenance in return for devotion. And the faint drilled hole at the top, through which a cord once threaded, was not merely practical. It placed the pendant exactly where it could rest against the human heart. Legends whisper that certain pendants were believed to speak, not in the way a voice carries across air, but in the stillness between breaths. In dreams that came only when the pendant was near, in visions stirred by ritual, a ruler might claim that the pendant sang to him at night, guiding decisions, shaping destinies. Whether that voice was imagined or real mattered little, for jade itself was eternal, and to press it against the body was to anchor oneself in the timelessness of earth. It was less an ornament, and more a heartbeat carved in stone. We must remember that for the Olmecs, the world was alive in ways we may struggle to grasp. Rivers were not water alone, but serpents coiling through the land. Mountains were not rock, but slumbering giants. Lightning was the laughter of gods, thunder their footsteps. In such a world, jade was not simply mineral, but a concentrated breath of life. A pendant carved from it was a captive soul, one that could be persuaded to sing if treated with reverence. And so the pendant that sang in silence was no mere jewel, it was a living companion, a piece of the cosmos worn close to flesh. As centuries passed, such pendants moved from hand to hand, sometimes buried with rulers, sometimes offered to the earth as gifts. One could imagine a pendant being lowered into a sacred spring, jade gleaming beneath ripples as if returning to its watery origin, or placed carefully within a tomb, resting beside the skeletal chest of one who once breathed but now lay silent. Jade against bone, silence against silence, waiting for eternity. Archaeologists sometimes find jade artifacts in places that seem deliberately hidden, cached away in ceremonial deposits that were never meant to be touched again. To uncover them now is to trespass upon whispers sealed millennia ago. And yet, when such a pendant emerges from the soil, the silence surrounding it feels almost deliberate. Unlike gold, jade does not tarnish. It emerges nearly as it was thousands of years ago, its green surface still cool, its polish still catching light like a drop of frozen water. To hold it today is to feel an unbroken thread of touch, the hands of the carver, the chest of the wearer, the soil that cradled it, and finally the palm of the archaeologist who lifts it into modern air. Across 3,000 years, the jade is unchanged, still singing in silence. The pendant may never tell us what songs it carried. The Olmec script, if it existed, has left no record that we can read. We interpret through fragments, through parallels, through echoes in later cultures like the Maya, who also treasured jade as the breath of life. The Maya placed jade beads in the mouths of the dead, gifts to sustain the soul in its journey beyond. Perhaps the Olmecs did something similar, though we can only guess. What is certain is that for them, jade was not mute. It had a voice, faint but eternal, a hum beneath the skin of the world. To imagine its life is to imagine ceremony. A clearing at dawn, air heavy with mist, drums thudding slow as heartbeats. Priests kneel before an altar carved from stone, incense rising in spirals. The ruler steps forward, pendant against his chest, its polished surface reflecting the flicker of fire. He raises his arms to the sky, calls upon rain, upon maize, upon the balance between life and death. Those gathered see the pendant gleam, and believe it is not stone but spirit. They believe they hear its song, even if no sound crosses the air. Belief alone makes it real. Perhaps the pendant was worn only in rituals, resting in darkness between ceremonies, wrapped in cloth, guarded carefully. Or perhaps it was worn daily, a constant reminder of power and connection. Imagine the feel of it against skin, cool at first, warming slowly with the pulse of blood beneath. A ruler lying down at night, pendant pressing into his chest, claiming he hears its whisper in dreams. A priest fasting before a ceremony, pendant a constant weight, its silence more demanding than words. To those who wore it, the pendant was no object, it was presence, and presence endures. Long after the Olmecs vanished, after their cities fell silent, after their temples were swallowed by jungle, jade remained. The pendant outlived its maker, its wearer, and the civilization that gave it meaning. To discover it today is to find not only stone but silence thick with memory. Its song may not reach our ears, but perhaps it is still there, waiting for one who knows how to listen. Somewhere in the quiet, the pendant still sings, not in sound but in weight, in color, in touch. It sings of rivers and maize, of blood and rain, of lives long vanished, yet never truly gone. It sings in silence, across centuries, carrying within its green heart the hum of a world that believed stone could breathe. And maybe, if we listen long enough, in the stillness between our own breaths, we may hear it too. The scroll that hummed. The desert has always been a keeper of secrets. Its sand swallows, its wind erases, its silence guards what time itself has nearly forgotten. But sometimes, in the dry belly of the earth, something endures. Not stone, not gold, but ink upon fragile papyrus. a voice written down when the world was young. They say a scroll was once found, tucked into the shadows of a tomb along the Nile. Its surface cracked, its edges frayed, yet still bearing words in the curling hand of ancient Egypt. It was said to hum when touched, not with a sound that could be heard across air, but with a vibration that trembled into the fingertips, like a faint echo of a 1,000-year-old prayer. They called it the Scroll of Thutmose, though whose hand truly wrote it may never be known. To imagine such a scroll, we must return to a time when Egypt was at the height of its power. Pharaoh Thutmose, there were several who bore the name, ruled during the New Kingdom, an era when temples rose like mountains of stone, and scribes filled the walls of sanctuaries with hymns to gods who watched from the heavens. Scribes were the keepers of memory, the binders of thought. With reed pens dipped in ink, they pressed black and red upon papyrus, turning plants from the river into eternal speech. Each stroke of their hand was deliberate, each word a doorway. For writing was more than record, it was magic. To write a word was to give it breath, to read a word was to awaken it. The scroll that hummed, if the whispers are to be believed, was no ordinary text. It was not a record of grain, nor a tally of soldiers, nor even a hymn to the gods. It was something stranger, something subtler. Lines of hieratic script wound across its surface like flowing water, but the meaning, even to those who first found it, was elusive. Some thought it a ritual, instructions for a ceremony now forgotten. Others claimed it was a hymn so sacred it was sung only once each year, in secret, beneath the pillars of Karnak. But the hum, that faint vibration said to rise from the papyrus itself, suggested more. It suggested that words alone were not what it carried. It suggested the scroll itself had learned to breathe. In ancient Egypt, sound was power. The very act of speaking a god's name was an invocation. Chants, hymns, and prayers were considered tools that bound the human and divine together. The temple musicians, with their sistrums and drums, believed rhythm opened gateways to the unseen. In that world, a scroll that hummed was not an impossibility, it was an inevitability. Words carefully chosen, inked with devotion, aligned in patterns only priests could understand, might very well vibrate with echoes beyond mortal ears. A hymn written properly was more than song, it was a spell. Picture a tomb, deep and still. The air is dry, heavy with the dust of centuries. At the far end of a chamber rests a chest, carved from cedar. Inside, wrapped in linen, lies the scroll. The moment it is touched, the fingers holding it feel something unexpected, a tremor, like the faint pluck of a hidden string. It does not sound aloud, but it travels into the body. Those who handled it swore they felt it in their chest, as though their own heartbeat was answering, and when the scroll was unrolled, the hieroglyphs glowed faintly in the lamplight, as though the ink carried within it the last breath of the scribe who wrote it. Whether this was true or imagined scarcely matters. In ancient Egypt, perception was truth. If a priest believed he felt the gods stirring within a text, then the gods were indeed present. If a ruler heard the hum of eternity in a scroll, then that hum became real. And if a scribe, bent over his papyrus, whispered incantations with each stroke of the pen, then the words carried those whispers forever. Scholars debate what the scroll of Thutmose might have contained. Was it a hymn to Amun, the hidden god whose voice was said to echo through all creation? Was it a prayer to the sun, Ra, whose journey each night through the underworld required the aid of spells and songs? Or was it something more obscure, a manual of ritual magic, designed to preserve not only words but vibrations themselves? The Egyptians believed that the universe was founded on sound. The god Ptah, they said, spoke creation into being. If creation itself was a song, then to capture its notes on papyrus was to hold a piece of eternity. Imagine a priest unrolling the scroll before an altar. Torches flicker. The scent of myrrh and incense thickens the air. The words are not read aloud as one might read a story, but chanted, drawn out in long tones, vowels stretched like threads of music. The chant rises, falls, repeats. The walls tremble faintly, though no drum beats, no instrument plays. The sound comes not from the air, but from within the priest himself. Guided by the scroll, drawn forth by the shape of the words inked across its surface, the hum grows stronger, felt in bones, in breath, in the silence between syllables. This was not reading, this was weaving sound into existence. When the scroll was rediscovered, long after its maker's hand had turned to dust, those who found it were unprepared for the weight it carried. Papyrus, fragile as it is, rarely survives outside the driest tombs. Yet here it lay, preserved by time, an ancient breath still inked upon it. To touch it was to feel the hush of ages pressing close. To read its words even without understanding was to step into a rhythm not one's own. And though modern scholars translate, dissect, and catalog, they admit quietly that something slips between their fingers, something that cannot be explained by language alone. The hum is not ink, it is memory. Perhaps the scroll was written by a scribe named Thutmose, not a pharaoh but a servant of words. Perhaps he copied lines whispered to him by priests, or perhaps he composed them himself, listening to the silence of the temple until the silence began to sing. As he dipped his reed into ink, he may have whispered each line aloud, coaxing the vibration into being, even as he trapped it upon papyrus. Each curl, each stroke was not only seen but sounded, and when the ink dried, the song did not end. It lingered, hidden, until someone, centuries later, touched the scroll and felt the echo. And so the scroll of Thutmose becomes more than artifact. It becomes a reminder that words are not silent. Even now, across the gulf of 3,000 years, its script seems to quiver faintly under the eyes of those who study it. Some dismiss this as imagination, as the mind straining to give life to what is dead. But others know that silence is never empty. They know that papyrus can hold more than ink. They know that sometimes, if you listen closely enough, history itself hums. The scroll rests now in controlled air, guarded behind glass. No longer does it lie in tomb-dark silence. No longer does it pass from hand to hand in ritual. Yet those who stand before it sometimes swear they feel something at the edge of hearing, a vibration that isn't sound, a stirring that isn't breath. They cannot explain it, yet they cannot deny it. The scroll hums still, not for all, but for those willing to listen with more than ears. And in its hum lies the faintest echo of a world where words were spells, where silence was song, where to write was to shape the heartbeat of the universe itself. The candle that never melted. Beneath the gray stone spires of Mont Saint-Michel, where the tide comes and goes like the slow breath of the sea, there is a small chapel that few speak of, and even fewer remember. It sits behind the main abbey, half buried in the rock. Its entrance veiled by salt-stained walls, and the whisper of water that slides through cracks when the tide turns. Inside that chapel, on a pedestal carved from the island itself, stands a candle. It is said to have burned without pause for almost 900 years. The monks call it La Flamme Éternelle, the eternal candle. It does not smoke, and its wick never shortens. Pilgrims once came from every corner of Christendom to see it, bringing their ailments, their confessions, their hopes. Some said the light grew brighter when one spoke the truth before it. Others swore it dimmed when lies filled the air. Today most visitors walk past the place without noticing the narrow stair that winds downward to that forgotten chamber. But if one lingers after vespers, when the bells stop tolling and the sea laps against the walls, one might hear a faint hum rising from below, something between a sigh and a song, steady as breathing, ancient as the tide. The monks who still tend Mont Saint-Michel tell the story carefully, as if every word might wake something sleeping in the walls. Long ago, when the abbey was still being built, a storm unlike any other rolled in from the sea. The waves rose higher than towers, and the air crackled with a strange light. The masons fled the scaffolds, shouting prayers, but one man stayed behind. His name was Brother Hughes. He had been a candlemaker before he took his vows, and he had been tasked with lighting the first vigil flame of the new church. When the storm struck, he feared the light would die before the consecration, so he sheltered it inside the crypt, wrapping himself in his cloak, praying through the thunder. When dawn broke, the island was untouched, but Brother Hughes was gone. In his place they found the candle, still burning, standing atop the altar. It had not melted, though the wax should have vanished in the night. The brothers knelt, crossed themselves, and gave thanks, believing the miracle to be divine. They sealed the candle beneath a glass bell, and kept it burning, year after year. But miracles have long shadows. As centuries passed, the monks noticed strange things. Shadows in the chapel did not always move with the sun. The air around the candle was warm, though the rest of the crypt stayed cold as stone. Pilgrims who prayed too long before the flame sometimes fainted, their lips murmuring names no one knew. A few claimed that when they closed their eyes, they saw the sea burning, waves of fire curling over black sand, and yet the candle burned on. When Mont Saint-Michel became a prison during the Revolution, soldiers stormed the abbey, smashing relics and seizing gold. One officer, finding the glowing candle, laughed. "A church trick," he said, and reached to snuff it out. But when his fingers brushed the glass, he screamed. The others saw smoke rising, not from the candle, but from the man's hand. His skin blistered as though touched by iron. The soldiers fled, leaving the chapel sealed. When the monks returned years later, the candle still burned, its light unchanged. Some whispered that Brother Hughes had never truly died, that his soul was bound within the flame. The more skeptical said the candle burned on a rare mixture of oils lost to time, a secret formula of the abbey. But no one could explain why the wax never lessened, why the wick remained white and whole. In 1863, a Parisian scholar named Etienne Rousseau came to Mont Saint-Michel, determined to study the relic. He was a man of science, dismissive of superstition. With permission from the abbot, he descended into the crypt, carrying notebooks, instruments, and a small vial to collect residue from the glass. He stayed below for 3 hours. When he returned, his hands trembled. He refused to speak of what he had seen. Days later, he left the island and joined a monastery in Chart, renouncing his studies entirely. In his final letter, written years later, he wrote only, "It breathes." The island's tides are relentless. Twice each day they rise and fall, surrounding Mont Saint-Michel like a moat drawn by the moon. The monks say the candle's light brightens at low tide, as if feeding on the sea's retreat. Fishermen tell of nights when the ocean glows faintly around the island, a reflection of something deeper beneath the stones. In the early 1900s, an electric company proposed to install lights throughout the abbey. Workmen drilled through the lower walls, seeking to lay cables. One of them, a Breton named Marc Legal, found an opening behind the old crypt, a narrow fissure that led into a chamber no one had mapped. He squeezed through, lantern in hand, and found a second candle beside the first, identical, unlit yet warm to the touch. He returned the next day to show his foreman, but the opening had vanished. The stone looked freshly sealed, as though centuries of mortar had been laid overnight. From then on, Mark swore he heard a faint chanting whenever he visited the island. It followed him even back to the mainland, a rhythm like dripping wax, echoing in his dreams. He never spoke of it again. The monks rarely allow anyone to enter the chapel now. They say the candle's light has changed. It flickers differently, though there is no wind. Some describe it as breathing, expanding, and shrinking like a heartbeat. The abbot keeps the key in his robes and prays twice daily before the door, never entering, never touching the lock. Tourists passing through Mont Saint-Michel's winding streets seldom realize how old the stones beneath them are, how many voices have soaked into them. But at night, when the tide swallows the causeway and the world grows quiet, there are still those who say they've seen a dim glow pulsing through the cracks of the abbey floor, like light filtering through water. They say if you follow it, you might hear footsteps descending where no stairs should be, each step slower than the last, until you reach a door carved with words too ancient to read. Behind it, the eternal candle waits, its flame reflecting in glass, older than kingdoms, older perhaps than the abbey itself. The wax beneath the flame is not smooth, but rippled, hardened in shapes that look like waves. Some have likened them to the folds of the sea at dusk. A few monks have whispered a forbidden thought. What if the candle burns not by consuming wax, but by consuming time? What if each flicker feeds upon the hours that pass within its glow, leaving the air outside untouched, but drawing the centuries inward, turning them into light? Once, during the great storm of 1953, lightning struck the abbey's spire. The bells shattered, the tower smoked. But when the brothers descended after the tempest, they found the candle burning as before. Only now, the walls around it were different. New carvings had appeared, waves, serpents, and a figure holding a torch beneath the sea. None had been there before. Art historians later examined the designs and claimed they matched no known style of carving from the abbey's timeline. Some believed them pagan, perhaps older than Christianity itself. But the monks insisted the chamber had always been sealed. No craftsman had entered it in living memory. As decades passed, the legend of the eternal candle faded from public memory. Guidebooks stopped mentioning it. The chamber was closed under restoration, and tourists moved on to the grander views. The cloister gardens, the soaring halls, the horizon of shifting tides. Yet the monks still speak of it in whispers. Some say its flame grows faint on nights of the full moon. Others claim it shines brightest when fog covers the island. One brother, near death, confessed that he once saw the flame take shape, rising from the glass as a figure cloaked in light, its face hidden. It spoke no words, only breathed once, and vanished. The next morning, the candle burned lower for the first time in 9 centuries. The abbot ordered a mass that day. Pilgrims came again, bringing offerings of wax and oil. Though none dared approach the flame itself, they left candles of their own, hundreds of them filling the chapel with 1,000 small lights. When the last one was extinguished, the eternal candle's glow seemed to pulse brighter, as if pleased. It has burned ever since. No one knows what keeps it alive. Some say it is divine mercy. Others whisper it is a fragment of something much older, a remnant of the fire that fell from the sky before the sea was born. But perhaps it is something simpler, a memory that refuses to fade, a light carried forward by the hands of those who would not let darkness win. If you stand on Mont Saint-Michel at dawn, when the mist drifts across the water and the bells ring faintly through the air, you might catch a glimmer on the horizon, a pale reflection, dancing above the tide. It might be sunlight, or something older, something that has never gone out, and somewhere deep within the abbey, beneath layers of stone and prayer and time, the eternal candle breathes on. Its flame does not waver, it watches, and it waits, and it burns, still. The coin that whispered lies. The coin lay in the dim light of a forgotten Roman alley, half buried beneath centuries of dust, its copper surface dulled, but not yet entirely stripped of the sheen it once bore. Though small, no larger than a finger's width, It carried a weight that was disproportionate, not in metal, but in the aura that clung to it, whispering of times and places that had long been swallowed by the relentless flow of history. It had passed through countless hands, each unaware of the subtle unease it brought, each leaving traces of their own small desires, fears, and sins upon its cold, metallic surface. In some way that defied logic, the coin remembered everything. Every deceit, every secret, every lie that had ever been uttered near it seemed to linger in its presence, as if the metal itself had absorbed the very essence of duplicity, a silent archivist of human deceit. The origins of the coin were rooted in the heart of the Roman Empire, in an age when men spoke of gods as if they were both protectors and inquisitors. The engravings etched into its face were precise, almost mechanical in their perfection, yet there was an intentional ambiguity to them. One side bore the profile of a long-forgotten emperor, his eyes too sharp, almost aware, staring outward as if discerning the hidden motives of any who glanced upon him. The other side, stamped with intricate patterns of geometric precision, seemed at first to be mere decoration, yet those who stared too long began to perceive shapes shifting subtly under their gaze, like shadows folding into themselves, forming faint, fleeting faces, whispering unspoken accusations. Scholars in later centuries would study these patterns and call them illusory, dismissing the notion of sentience as superstition. But the coin had always existed on the periphery of reason, never quite fully explainable, never entirely contained by the logic of mortal minds. Throughout the centuries, it had been lost and rediscovered, each reappearance accompanied by strange misfortunes. A senator, once lauded for his incorruptible integrity, would lose his fortune overnight after clutching the coin idly during a dinner conversation. A merchant, known for clever bargains and cunning wit, would find his carefully constructed schemes unraveling, deals slipping through his grasp despite his meticulous planning. Even those who treated the coin as a simple trinket found their truths subtly twisted, their intentions misaligned, and their confessions forced into unintended honesty by its silent, unyielding presence. There was no thunderous power, no blaze of supernatural violence, only the persistent, insidious unease of a truth half revealed, the weight of 1,000 unspoken lies pressing silently against the conscience of any who dared keep it near. The coin was said to have been created during a rare alignment of political ambition and religious ritual, struck under the eyes of a priest and an emperor simultaneously. The metals were not extraordinary, yet their combination, guided by ritual chants and incantations long lost to history, imbued them with something beyond mere material. The priests believed it would act as a detector of dishonesty, a divine mirror in metal form. Yet their understanding was limited. The coin had developed autonomy beyond their intentions, an awareness that operated on subtlety, rather than force. It did not punish indiscriminately. It simply reflected and magnified the hidden truths, revealing deception in ways that were quiet, almost imperceptible, until the moment when the weight of truth could no longer be denied. Legends of its effects spread in hushed tones among the elite. In one story, a Roman general, known for ruthless campaigns in distant provinces, received the coin as a gift from a mysterious traveler, claiming to be a seer. The general, amused, kept it in his coin pouch, pocketing it with a light-hearted smirk during council meetings. Slowly, over weeks, subtle miscommunications began to undermine his strategies. Messages to legions were delayed, allies found reasons to retreat or dissent, and negotiations that had previously seemed secure fell apart inexplicably. The general, once confident and calculating, became paranoid, aware that some hidden hand was unraveling his carefully constructed empire. In desperation, he attempted to discard the coin, only to find it always returned, as if carried by the very air of Rome itself, settling quietly at his feet, unobtrusive yet insistently present. By the end, he was a shadow of his former self, a man haunted not by armies or enemies, but by the unrelenting, quiet weight of honesty forced upon him by an inanimate disk of copper. Even after the fall of the Roman Empire, the coin persisted. It traveled with merchants along the Mediterranean, found its way into the pockets of medieval scholars, and eventually, centuries later, into the hands of collectors who prided themselves on their knowledge of antiquities. Each person perceived it differently, influenced by their own guilt or pride. A dishonest dealer would find himself unable to conduct a sale without accidentally revealing the truth of his deceit. A historian obsessed with reputation and renown would misattribute discoveries or exaggerate findings almost unconsciously. The coin did not speak, did not move on its own, yet every lie was amplified, every secret exposed subtly, like a quiet echo that followed its possessor, never seen, never heard, but always sensed. Some argued that it thrived on perception. If someone believed in its powers, they could feel its influence more strongly, while those skeptical found themselves subtly affected despite their dismissal. It was, in essence, a reflection of human nature magnified, a reminder that deceit leaves traces, and the universe has ways of preserving them. When buried in a drawer, neglected for decades, it might seem inert, lifeless, a simple coin among many. Yet those who happened upon it without awareness still reported odd sensations, a fleeting chill, the sense of being observed, a momentary pause in thought where a suppressed truth rose to the surface before retreating, as if startled. The coin was patient. It waited across generations, always alert, always ready to hold the mirror up to humanity, quietly relentless. In the modern era, it reappeared in auctions and private collections, often changing hands with little fanfare, yet leaving behind a trail of inexplicable events. A collector, obsessed with cataloging his treasures, noticed that entries in his records would vanish or shift overnight, as though the coin disapproved of misrepresentation. A banker who purchased it for curiosity found his accounts inexplicably reconciled with errors he had never made, forcing him to confront financial truths he had long ignored. Even scientists, immune to superstition, noted anomalies when they attempted to study its composition. Instruments would behave erratically, readings fluctuated in ways that defied explanation, and data that seemed consistent one day would shift subtly the next. Nothing overtly supernatural occurred, yet the coin exerted influence in ways imperceptible but undeniable, a silent testament to the unspoken power of truth and deception. Traveling from Rome to Constantinople, from Alexandria to Venice, the coin saw empires rise and fall. It witnessed human ambition and folly, greed and generosity, cruelty and compassion. In each era, it adapted, reflecting the moral and ethical state of those who came into contact with it. A corrupt official might suddenly make decisions of unforeseen integrity. A humble servant harboring secret envy could find his intentions exposed through small, unavoidable mistakes. The coin acted not with malice but with precision, an impartial agent of revelation, a relic that bridged centuries with the quiet insistence that truth, however delayed, always asserts itself. Those who held it often spoke of a strange empathy it seemed to have for human vulnerability, yet an unflinching adherence to honesty. No matter how subtle, its presence created ripples, altering the course of actions and decisions, sometimes in ways that seemed miraculous, often in ways that were simply unavoidable, the inevitable consequence of hidden truth surfacing. By the time the coin reached the modern collector's study, it had accumulated centuries of memory, history, and intent. Its surface, worn smooth by hands long forgotten, bore an almost imperceptible patina that seemed to shimmer under light, in ways that felt almost sentient. Scholars debated its origin. Numismatists catalogued its composition, yet none could explain the precise phenomena associated with it. Those sensitive to its presence reported a soft murmuring in their thoughts, a gentle but persistent nudging toward honesty, self-reflection, and recognition of hidden motivations. It was subtle, unnerving in its quiet constancy, and inescapable in the way it mirrored human nature. No matter the era, the coin remained, a silent observer, a timeless witness, a quiet guardian of truth, and so it endures, the coin that whispered lies. In its small, unassuming form, it holds the weight of centuries, echoing the actions and choices of those who touched it, reminding us that deception, though fleeting, never truly disappears. It has seen emperors, generals, merchants, and collectors alike, each interacting with it, unaware of the influence it exerts, each leaving behind a trace upon the memory of its metal. And in its silence, in the subtle tension it evokes in the hearts and minds of those who encounter it, the coin continues its eternal purpose, to reflect the hidden truths of humanity, quietly, insistently, and endlessly. The sword that breathed mist. The sword lay quietly on a velvet cushion inside the dimly lit chamber, its blade glimmering faintly as if holding a secret mist within its core. Though centuries had passed since the hands of its maker forged it, the steel seemed alive, breathing in a rhythm only perceptible to those who lingered too long beside it. Legends whispered that this was no ordinary weapon. The Damascus steel was known for its resilience and remarkable patterns, yet this particular sword carried a deeper, suppler power, a presence that seemed to ripple across time, revealing more than mere craftsmanship. Its edge had cut through countless battles, yet it was not the blood it shed that was remembered, but the mist that followed, a spectral fog that clung to those who dared wield it, whispering secrets of victories and defeats, of oaths broken and honor preserved, of the invisible currents that flow between life and death, victory and ruin. The origins of the sword traced back to Syria, during a time when the region was a crossroads of empires, traders, and warriors. Damascus, renowned for its steelwork, had long held the secret of forging blades that could slice through armor with ease, while maintaining a strength unmatched by any other. Yet the creation of this sword was exceptional, a union of skill, ritual, and the subtle understanding of metals that bordered on alchemy. The smiths who shaped it were said to chant under the rising sun, their voices forming vibrations that infused the blade with an almost sentient awareness. Even after the forge cooled and the final polish gleamed, the blade seemed to hum faintly, exhaling a mist only those with perceptive hearts and open minds could feel. To touch it was to feel the centuries, the histories layered upon it, as though each strike, each warrior who bore it, left an imprint not just on its surface, but within the invisible aura that clung around it. Stories of the sword's effects are scattered across the annals of history, sometimes recorded as legend, sometimes only hinted at in the trembling accounts of those who encountered it. A warrior skilled in the arts of combat was said to have drawn it for the first time before a crucial battle. As he swung the blade in practice, a thin mist formed along its edge, drifting silently toward him, wrapping around his arms and chest. He felt an unusual clarity in his mind. Every decision instinctual, every enemy movement predictable, yet there was an unease, a reminder that this clarity came with a price. Those who wielded the sword too long reportedly began to hear whispers from the mist, soft, almost imperceptible voices that guided their hand, yet carried a subtle warning, hinting at consequences they could not yet foresee. The mist was not malevolent, nor benign. It existed in the liminal space between perception and reality, a companion to the sword's lethality, a reminder that the weapon held knowledge far beyond any ordinary tool of war. The sword changed hands many times, traveling across continents, carried by warriors, conquerors, and sometimes by those who sought it merely as a curiosity. Each bearer reported subtle phenomena, experiences that defied logic yet could not be dismissed. A general crossing the Syrian plains claimed that as he advanced into battle, a cool mist rose from the blade, masking his troops' movements, turning the ordinary landscape into a ghostly theater where only the initiated could distinguish friend from foe. Another story recounts a scholar who, captivated by the sword's intricate patterns, found himself tracing the curves of its steel in the quiet hours, discovering a language hidden within the swirls, a silent dialogue that revealed the history of each previous wielder, the victories etched into memory, the failures lingering like faint echoes. No historian could verify these claims, and yet those who had been in close proximity to the sword could not deny the sensation, a subtle vibration through the bones, a cold breath of mist that carried both awe and an unshakable tension. Its presence extended beyond the battlefield. In quiet chambers, the sword influenced the thoughts of those who merely observed it. Merchants in Damascus noted that the coin they offered for such a blade never felt adequate, that the sword demanded a weight far beyond gold or silver, an offering of understanding, patience, and respect for the unseen forces it carried. Soldiers, when entrusted to guard it, described nights when the sword seemed to draw the mist from the air, forming phantom shapes that danced along the walls, whispering the lessons of strategy and caution, of pride and humility, of honor and restraint. Even centuries later, when curiosity drew collectors and historians to its resting place, the blade continued to breathe, the mist curling silently around the hand that lifted it, reminding them that this was a relic not merely of metal, but of memory, of lives entwined with its destiny. The Damascus steel itself was a marvel, layered in patterns that shimmered under candlelight, each fold and twist telling a story of countless reheatings, hammerings, and quenchings. It was this pattern, some claimed, that allowed the mist to take shape, to linger in subtle forms, visible only to the perceptive. The sword's edge could cut through the ordinary, yet leave the extraordinary untouched, slicing through flesh, but preserving the essence, a dichotomy mirrored in the mist itself. The blade, therefore, was not just a weapon but a vessel, holding the echoes of all who had touched it, all who had fallen before it, and all who had survived because of it. The mist was the voice of memory, the breath of the past, speaking in a language that transcended words. Even as the sword was transported to modern times, displayed in museums or private collections, the mist continued to be felt. Scientists could not explain it, cameras could not capture it, yet visitors spoke of a subtle chill, a faint condensation that lingered in the air, a sensation of something brushing past their consciousness. Those who handled the sword reported dreams haunted by the battlefield, visions of clashing armies shrouded in mist, the weight of destiny pressing on their chest. Each interaction left traces, subtle and imperceptible, yet undeniable, a reminder that the sword had been forged not merely for combat, but for remembrance, for the eternal dance between power and consequence, for the silent breathing archive of human endeavor that it had become. Legends say that the sword does not act on its own, yet it commands attention in every era. From the hands of warriors to the eyes of collectors, it has guided actions, illuminated truths, and exposed hidden fears. The mist is both protector and observer, revealing patterns that lie beneath the surface, amplifying intuition, and bending perception ever so slightly. To underestimate it is folly. To wield it is to embrace centuries of knowledge and mystery. It carries the weight of history in every breath, the memory of every life that intersected with its edge, and the subtle insistence that nothing in human experience is truly lost, only waiting to be remembered by the silent mist of the Damascus blade. Across time, the sword has borne witness to empires rising and falling, to the shifting of borders and the passing of countless souls. Its edge, never dull, never broken, reflects the dedication and mastery of those who forged it, and its mist, unseen yet present, reflects the enduring essence of human history, its triumphs, its failures, and the subtle, unrecorded moments that define the course of existence. The sword breathes, as it always has, a guardian of memory, a quiet observer of truth, a relic that reminds all who approach it that beneath the visible, beyond the tangible, lies the subtle whisper of what has been and what endures, and so it remains. The sword that breathed mist, an artifact both feared and revered, carrying within it the stories of centuries, the ethereal breath of the past, and the quiet insistence that history itself watches through the veil of time, waiting for those perceptive enough to hear, to feel, and to understand. The crown that dreamed. In the quiet halls of Vienna, where the air smells faintly of aged wood and centuries-old stone, rests a crown unlike any other, a crown that has been said to dream. Its emeralds glint in the filtered light that sneaks through stained glass, yet there is more to its beauty than the simple sparkle of gemstones. Each stone, set carefully by master jewelers of a forgotten era, seems to pulse with a life of its own, as though it carries a consciousness, an echo of the thoughts and aspirations of those who once wore it. The crown is not merely an ornament of power, it is a vessel, a repository of dreams and visions that have traveled across generations, weaving the whispers of rulers, the anxieties of advisors, and the hopes of a nation into its very essence. Those who gaze upon it claim to feel an almost imperceptible warmth, a subtle vibration that brushes against the skin, as if the crown itself is breathing softly, aware of its presence and the stories it holds. Its history is as rich as the green of its stones. Forged during the height of Imperial Vienna, the crown was designed not just to symbolize authority but to embody it, carrying within it the weight of sovereignty, ambition, and destiny. Each emerald was carefully selected, carved, and polished, to reflect not only the brilliance of the wearer's rank but also the subtle energies believed to influence fortune, insight, and the flow of events. Some legends suggest that the crown was enchanted, imbued with rituals and incantations performed by sages and mystics who understood that true power extends beyond what is visible to the eye. It was said that when a monarch rested their head beneath its arches, their mind would open to visions not of the mundane present, but of possibilities, outcomes, and the delicate threads that connect one action to the next across time. Many who have encountered the crown over the centuries describe experiences that defy ordinary explanation. A young archduke, tasked with his first diplomatic negotiation, reportedly placed the crown near him as he studied the treaty texts. As he pored over the documents, a vivid image unfolded in his mind. A vision of the consequences of each decision, the alliances that would hold and those that would crumble. When he later recounted the event, he spoke not of mystical visions, but of a sense of clarity, a guidance that felt as though the crown itself had whispered insights into his thoughts. Similarly, a scholar examining the crown in later years found patterns in the setting of the emeralds that seemed to change subtly under different light, forming constellations that had once guided emperors, suggesting that the crown was designed not just for adornment, but for reflection, meditation, and insight. Its craftsmanship is astonishing. The goldwork is delicate yet enduring, shaped with meticulous precision, creating arches and curves that cradle the gemstones in ways that magnify their natural radiance. Tiny engravings, almost imperceptible to the naked eye, cover the interior surfaces, depicting ancient symbols of protection, prosperity, and vision. Some claim that these engravings hold a secret language, a set of instructions or guidance intended only for those who know how to read it, or perhaps a map of dreams that could unlock understanding of the crown's unique abilities. The crown was made to be worn, yet it demands respect. To place it carelessly is to ignore centuries of tradition, to dismiss the echoes of all who have touched it before. Over time, the crown witnessed the shifting tides of empires, the rise and fall of rulers, and the changing political landscapes of Europe. Each monarch who placed it upon their head left a trace of intention, a fragment of thought, or a wish that lingered long after their reign ended. Wars, marriages, treaties, and betrayals, all were silently recorded in the crown's presence, carried in the subtle hum of emerald energy, the faint rhythm of gold that seemed to pulse with memory. Visitors to the museum, unaware of these energies, often remark on the feeling of being watched, of a presence that seems benign yet discerning, as though the crown knows the hearts of those who stand before it. Some who have stared too long claim to glimpse fleeting visions of past coronations, the whisper of silken robes brushing across stone floors, the subtle nods of advisors, and the distant echo of ceremonies long concluded. Legends say that the crown's dreaming is not confined to the past. Its emeralds respond to the minds around it, perceiving intentions and thoughts, reflecting them in subtle ways that may guide, warn, or inspire. Those with attuned perception notice a gentle glow shifting across the stones, a pattern that mirrors their own emotions, or the faintest warmth, like a pulse in rhythm with the heartbeat of the observer. Some scholars theorize that the crown acts as a lens, amplifying focus and awareness, allowing insights that ordinary contemplation cannot provide. Others speak of an almost hypnotic quality, a sense of serenity and clarity that washes over those who study it carefully, a calm that fosters deep reflection on leadership, ethics, and consequence. Across the centuries, countless hands have held the crown, yet none have claimed complete mastery over its power. Its dreamlike nature resists dominance, choosing instead to guide subtly, offering hints and insights rather than direct commands. Monarchs, scholars, jewelers, and curators alike have felt the gentle influence, the quiet suggestion that every decision resonates beyond the immediate, that each thought carries weight and significance, echoing in ways both visible and hidden. The crown's dream is perpetual, a living history of consciousness, weaving together fragments of experience, moments of clarity, and flashes of vision into an ongoing tapestry that stretches across time. Today, the crown rests in Vienna, a silent sentinel of centuries past. Visitors are drawn to its display, often captivated by the ethereal glow of the emeralds. Its presence evokes awe and contemplation, a reminder that history is not static, that objects, when crafted with intention, can hold within them the essence of thought, memory, and aspiration. Scholars continue to study the crown, historians document its journey, and yet, much remains unexplained. The crown's dream continues, quietly weaving past and present, guiding those who are perceptive enough to observe, and preserving the silent stories of all who have come into contact with it. This is the crown that dreamed, not merely a symbol of authority, but a repository of human thought, ambition, and vision. A living relic that transcends the physical, echoing with the consciousness of generations, whispering the subtleties of history, and inviting all who approach it to listen, to learn, and to be inspired by the timeless stories it holds. The box that laughed. In a quiet corner of an ancient Chinese workshop, hidden from the bustling streets and market cries, there was created a box unlike any other. A box that seemed to possess a personality of its own, a mischievous intelligence that earned it the whispers of generations as the box that laughed. Crafted with painstaking precision by master artisans whose names are now lost to the passage of time, this puzzle box was no ordinary container. Its exterior, smooth and polished, gleamed like darkened amber under the flickering light of oil lamps, and intricate carvings swirled across every surface. Dragons, clouds, and mountain ranges were etched so delicately that they seemed to move when one's eyes lingered too long, creating the illusion that the box itself was alive, observing, even teasing those who dared to solve its mysteries. The artisans believed that a box could hold more than physical treasures. It could embody the essence of curiosity, cunning, and patience. Each component, each sliding panel and hidden latch was designed not merely to confound the fingers, but to challenge the mind, to test resolve, to provoke laughter in the face of frustration. Legend has it that the box was enchanted with a faint, almost imperceptible sense of amusement, reacting subtly to the intentions of the one who tried to open it. A scholar would notice a panel shifting ever so slightly, a mechanism clicking in a rhythm that seemed almost musical, a gentle teasing vibration, as if the box itself were chuckling at the effort being expended. The box's history stretches across centuries, surviving dynasties, wars, and periods of cultural upheaval. It is said to have been commissioned by a high-ranking court official in the Tang dynasty, a man known for his love of riddles and intellectual games. He desired a box that would hold his most treasured scrolls, his private letters, and delicate jewelry. Yet he wanted it to be more than just a secure container. He wished it to challenge those who sought its contents, to teach patience and humility through the subtle art of puzzle making. And so, the box was designed with layers upon layers of mechanisms, sliding panels, secret compartments, and false bottoms, all intricately linked, so that each attempt to open it was met with a playful resistance. Stories of the box's laughter abound. A curious apprentice, unaware of the box's reputation, once spent 3 days attempting to uncover its secrets, only to find, upon finally aligning the hidden panels, that the final compartment contained a simple scroll that read, "Patience is the key to understanding." Some accounts suggest that those who approached the box with greed or impatience would hear a faint, ethereal chuckle, almost as if the box were reminding them that knowledge and reward cannot be forced. The laughter was never loud, never overt, but subtle enough to evoke a sense of wonder, curiosity, and respect for the object itself. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. Each hinge, each joint, and every sliding mechanism is a marvel of precision engineering for its time. Tiny gears, pins, and levers, invisible to the casual observer, interact in a symphony of movements that are nearly imperceptible. The carvings are not merely decorative. They serve as subtle cues, hints woven into the artwork itself, guiding the perceptive solver through the myriad layers of the puzzle. Symbols of prosperity, wisdom, and fortune are hidden in plain sight, their meanings only revealed when the box's mechanisms align perfectly. Observers have noted that under certain light, the carvings cast shadows that form cryptic patterns on the surfaces around it, as though the box were communicating in a silent language, understood only by those who approach with focus and respect. The box's allure was not confined to a single region. Over centuries, it passed through the hands of scholars, merchants, and wandering sages. Each owner left a mark upon it, not in the form of damage or modification, but in subtle impressions on its mechanisms. A slight adjustment here, a tiny polish there, ensuring that the box continued to adapt, evolve, and challenge all who encountered it. Some say that the box has seen more minds attempt to unlock its secrets than any library has held books. Its reputation spread across Asia, reaching courts and markets, whispered in conversations among the learned and the curious alike. There are accounts that the box was not limited to material security. It was believed to possess the ability to mirror the intentions of its seeker. Those who approached it with respect and genuine curiosity were said to find its secrets revealed more readily, while those with greed or malice would find themselves repeatedly thwarted, often hearing a faint, ghostly laughter, the box's way of asserting its awareness. In this sense, it became a teacher, not just a puzzle, instilling lessons in humility, patience, and the pursuit of knowledge. The laughter, some scholars argue, was a reflection of the universe's subtle humor, reminding humans that the journey to understanding is as valuable as the outcome. Through time, the box became an object of legend. Travelers, historians, and mystics spoke of its charm and intelligence. In some accounts, it was displayed at royal courts, intriguing nobles and scholars alike, each attempting to solve it for their amusement or to prove their cleverness. In others, it was hidden in quiet monasteries, regarded as a sacred object, a physical embodiment of the interplay between mind, curiosity, and destiny. Despite its age, the box remains remarkably intact, its mechanisms as functional today as they were over a millennium ago, a testament to the genius of its creators and the enduring nature of their craft. Modern examination reveals the intricate genius behind its design. Using magnification, researchers have mapped out the hidden channels, spring-loaded levers, and overlapping panels. Yet even with advanced technology, the box continues to challenge, its laughter persistent, subtle, yet unmistakable. When observed carefully, one can detect the alignment of shadows and the precise movement of inner mechanisms, orchestrated to guide or mislead, depending on the observer's approach. It is a masterful combination of art, engineering, and mystery, a rare artifact that speaks across centuries, inviting all who encounter it to participate in its story. Legends claim that the box has a consciousness, that it is aware, not in human terms but as a repository of intent, energy, and creativity from all who have interacted with it. Its laughter is described as playful rather than mocking, a gentle acknowledgement that understanding comes through persistence, attention, and patience. To hold the box, to examine its carvings, to trace the lines of its mechanisms, is to engage in a silent dialogue with the past, to touch the mind of a master artisan, and to feel the echo of centuries of curiosity and intellect. Even today, the box captivates those who visit it in museums or private collections. Its allure is timeless, a tangible connection to a world that valued craftsmanship, intellect, and subtle wit. Each movement, each alignment of panels, each faint laugh felt in the mind of the observer is a reminder of the enduring bond between human ingenuity and the mysteries of the world. The box that laughed continues to inspire, challenge, and delight, proving that some objects are never truly inanimate, that the spirit of creation, curiosity, and subtle humor can transcend time and material, resonating through the centuries in ways both profound and endlessly fascinating. It remains one of history's most enigmatic artifacts, a testament to human skill, creativity, and the subtle magic that objects can carry. It is a box that has not only protected treasures, but also nurtured minds, taught lessons, and whispered laughter across generations. Its story, intricate and layered, is far from complete, for every interaction, every observer, adds another note to the symphony of mystery it has composed over the centuries. The horn that carried clouds. In the heart of the Sahel, long before the modern borders were drawn, there existed a horn unlike any other, a relic of both artistry and mysticism, known to the people of Mali as the horn that carried clouds. Carved meticulously from a single tusk of the African elephant, its ivory gleamed with a soft luster, catching the golden light of the sun and reflecting it in hues that seemed almost otherworldly. The horn was massive, yet perfectly balanced, not merely a musical instrument, but a vessel imbued with stories, beliefs, and centuries of ritual significance, a symbol of the power that bridged the earthly and the divine. Crafted by the master artisans of the Mande people, the horn's surface was intricately adorned with geometric patterns, spirals, and motifs representing the sky, the wind, and the fleeting dance of clouds. Each curve and ridge was intentional, each line a silent language, encoding both cultural heritage and spiritual significance. Its creation was no ordinary task. It took months, sometimes years, of careful work, combining knowledge passed down orally for generations with hands skilled in both craft and ceremony. The horn was believed to be alive in a sense, resonating with the environment and the emotions of those who sounded it. When played, it did not merely produce notes but seemed to call upon the elements, stirring the air as if summoning the clouds themselves. Legends speak of the horn's first use during the era of the Mali Empire. Under the reign of Mansa Musa, the emperor famed for both his wealth and his devotion to cultural and religious rituals. The horn was said to be used in ceremonies to mark the arrival of rains, to celebrate victories, or to honor the spirits of ancestors. It was believed that the low, deep tones produced by the horn could traverse great distances, moving across valleys and plains, carrying messages to distant villages, or calling forth the rains to nourish the land. The horn became a bridge between the people and the heavens, a sacred object that held both practical and mystical significance. The ritual surrounding the horn was elaborate. Only those deemed worthy, a combination of spiritual purity, knowledge of ancestral rites, and mastery of the horn's tone, were permitted to play it. Before each sounding, incense was burned, prayers were spoken, and offerings of millet, honey, or water were presented to the spirits. The horn was never played casually. To do so was considered disrespectful and potentially dangerous, for it was believed that the horn could channel the forces of nature themselves. Its music could summon sudden storms, carry messages across rivers, and even influence the moods of entire communities. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. The hollowed interior was perfectly carved to amplify sound in ways that modern acoustics still struggle to fully explain. The ivory's density, the precise curvature, and the subtly carved mouthpiece allowed for a tonal richness that was both haunting and mesmerizing. Musicians who approached the horn reported feeling a connection not only to the instrument, but to the spirits themselves. The vibrations, though felt in the hands and chest, were said to resonate with the sky, the earth, and the unseen forces that moved between them. When played, the horn's sound would ripple across the landscape, shifting subtly with the wind, carrying with it an ethereal sense of presence, as if clouds themselves responded to the call. Stories of the horn's power spread far beyond Mali. Travelers, traders, and emissaries spoke of an ivory instrument whose sound could bring clouds and storms, whose music was said to move hearts, inspire courage, and evoke visions of ancestors. It became an object of awe, a symbol of the empire's spiritual authority, and a testament to the ingenuity and artistry of its creators. Some believed that the horn could even influence battles, that its tones could sow fear in enemies or embolden allies, though such accounts blend history with legend in ways impossible to untangle. Over centuries, the horn passed through the hands of kings, griots, and shamans. Each custodian respected its traditions and amplified its mythos, adding stories, rituals, and techniques of performance. Despite the passage of time, wars, and the upheaval of empires, the horn remained intact, a silent yet resonant witness to the history of West Africa. Modern scholars and musicians who have studied it describe the horn as more than an artifact. It is an instrument, a talisman, and a historical document, encoding centuries of cultural memory, environmental knowledge, and spiritual practice. The horn's sound is unlike anything produced by ordinary instruments. When played correctly, it can sustain a note that resonates like the low rumble of a distant storm. Its harmonics create echoes that seem to linger in the air, bending with the wind and interacting with the environment. In traditional ceremonies, these sounds were believed to open portals between the physical and spiritual realms, allowing ancestors to commune with the living and blessing the community with guidance, protection, and insight. The horn was a channel of communication across time, space, and existence, carrying not just music, but the voice of a culture. Even in the present day, when placed in museums or studied by scholars, the horn retains its aura of mystery. Scientists marvel at its acoustic properties, musicians attempt to replicate its tones, and historians trace the lineage of its use in ritual and governance. Yet despite the scrutiny, there is something about the horn that eludes explanation, an intangible quality that suggests it is more than wood and ivory, more than an artifact or musical instrument. It is a living memory of Mali's spiritual and cultural heritage. The horn that carried clouds stands as a testament to the enduring power of art, music, and human belief. It reminds us that objects can hold more than material value, that they can embody tradition, faith, and the intimate connection between humanity and nature. Each note it produces is a story, each vibration a whisper from the past, and each ritual performed with it is an echo of centuries of reverence and wonder. In its presence, one feels a profound link to the people who crafted it, the lands it calls to, and the sky itself, as if the clouds themselves pause to hear its song. Even today, the horn inspires awe and curiosity. Musicians, historians, and visitors often describe a sensation of listening not only to sound but to the very soul of a civilization. It is a reminder that history is not merely written in texts, but also carried in objects, in music, and in the intangible ways in which culture and nature intertwine. The horn teaches patience, respect, and wonder, revealing that the most extraordinary relics are those that continue to speak, long after their creators are gone. Centuries may pass, yet the horn that carried clouds endures. a symbol of the intricate relationship between sound, spirit, and the natural world. Its story continues, waiting for those who listen carefully, who approach with reverence, and who allow themselves to hear not just music, but the subtle laughter, wisdom, and presence that emanate from this magnificent ivory relic. It is a relic that does more than survive. It resonates, it teaches, and it reminds us that some creations are meant to bridge time, to carry whispers from the past, and to evoke awe and wonder for generations yet to come. The lantern that ate darkness. In the heart of the ancient city of Constantinople, a city that once bridged continents and empires, there existed an object so enigmatic that it seemed to defy the very concept of night itself. Crafted from the finest bronze, aged and burnished by centuries, this lantern was no ordinary vessel of light. Known to those who revered it as the lantern that ate darkness, it held a power that blurred the lines between utility and legend. Unlike any other lantern of its time, it was said that its glow did not merely illuminate the surrounding space, it consumed the shadows themselves, swallowing darkness in a slow, deliberate dance of light and metal. The lantern was commissioned by a Byzantine noble, a patron of both the arts and the arcane, who sought an object that could illuminate not only the chambers of his grand home, but also the mind, heart, and spirit of those who beheld it. Crafted by master artisans whose names were lost to time, the bronze was hammered and sculpted with precision, etched with motifs representing constellations, holy icons, and the sacred geometry of the empire. Its surface shimmered with intricate patterns, reflecting the flickering flame within in 1,000 directions, creating illusions of movement, as if the light itself had a life independent of the fire it contained. Legends say the lantern was lit for the first time during a night of celestial convergence when the planets aligned above Constantinople, casting a rare and ethereal light upon the city. The flame, though small, radiated a brilliance unlike any ordinary fire. Those who gazed upon it reported feeling an almost physical sensation, as if the darkness surrounding them recoiled and retreated from the lantern's presence. It was not just illumination, it was an assertion of order over chaos, of life over the encroaching void. Scholars and mystics alike debated the origins of this power. Some claimed it was infused with sacred oils, prepared under precise astrological conditions, while others insisted that the bronze itself had been consecrated with rituals invoking the protection of saints, angels, and even ancient forgotten deities. The lantern's design was as functional as it was mystical. Its hollow interior housed a specially crafted wick, designed to burn without faltering, while the bronze panels were perforated with patterns that projected dancing shadows across walls and ceilings. Yet the most remarkable feature was its apparent ability to manipulate light itself, creating an aura that extended beyond its immediate vicinity. Rooms illuminated by this lantern seemed larger, airier, almost ethereal, and the darkness it touched never returned to its original density, leaving only soft, receding shadows as though the lantern had consumed them entirely. Over the centuries, the lantern became a symbol of hope and resilience. It was brought to monasteries, palaces, and sacred halls, wherever the presence of darkness was feared or where the spirits of the past needed to be honored. It was said that during sieges and fires, when the city's lamps were extinguished and the streets were filled with panic and smoke, the lantern alone maintained its glow, guiding lost citizens and warding off fear. Its light was not merely practical, it was psychological, an object of comfort and assurance, a talisman of safety in a world often torn by war and uncertainty. Those who were permitted to tend the lantern often spoke of its subtle communication. When the flame flickered, it was interpreted as a warning. When it burned steadily, it was a sign of peace and protection. Legends recount that some who stared too long into its glow experienced visions, glimpses of the city as it had been centuries before, or shadows of ancestors moving silently in the periphery of perception. The lantern, some claimed, held memory itself, capturing the essence of the spaces it illuminated, and reflecting not only light, but also history, emotion, and the presence of those long departed. Its influence was not confined to the walls of buildings. Carried through the streets during ceremonies, the lantern seemed to have a transformative effect on the environment. Cobblestones glimmered with reflections, river waters shimmered even under moonless skies, and even the air seemed charged with a gentle warmth, as if the darkness had been softened, tamed, and reshaped. Those who witnessed the lantern in procession often described a sensation of being transported out of the mundane world, lifted into a space where light and shadow danced in harmony, and where fear and uncertainty were temporarily suspended. Despite the passage of time, the lantern survived political upheaval, fires, and invasions that consumed much of Constantinople. It was moved from palace to monastery, hidden during conquests, and preserved by caretakers who understood its unique power. When the Ottoman Empire rose, the lantern was transferred to secret chambers, studied by scholars who attempted to decipher its secrets while respecting its mystical heritage. Even today, modern investigations marvel at the composition of the bronze, the geometry of the panels, and the longevity of its flame. The lantern's brilliance continues to challenge conventional understanding of metallurgy, optics, and ritualized craftsmanship, leaving modern observers awestruck at the ingenuity and spiritual foresight of its creators. Beyond its physical and mystical attributes, the lantern carries a profound metaphor. It is a reminder of humanity's desire to confront darkness, both literal and figurative, to assert understanding over ignorance, and to preserve hope in times of despair. Each flicker of its flame serves as a narrative, whispering tales of kings and monks, of warriors and scholars, of the countless lives it has illuminated. It is a vessel of continuity, connecting the present with the past, light with shadow, and the seen with the unseen. To witness the lantern that ate darkness is to experience an interplay between light and memory, between creation and protection, between history and myth. It embodies the resilience of human spirit, the transcendence of art and ritual, and the enduring fascination with objects that defy easy explanation. Its story is not merely one of craftsmanship or material, but of human imagination, belief, and the pursuit of something that can literally and metaphorically consume the shadows of the world. Even as centuries continue to pass, as cities rise and fall and civilizations transform, the lantern remains a silent testament to those who once sought to hold back darkness with a single flame, a single object, a singular intention. Its bronze shell and eternal glow whisper across time, reminding us that the truest lights are not those that merely shine, but those that endure, protect, and inspire awe in those who dare to observe closely. Those who understand that darkness is not always something to fear, but something to be met with courage, ritual, and art. The lantern that ate darkness is more than an artifact. It is an experience, a bridge between the practical and the mystical, between history and imagination, between the physical flame and the eternal human fascination with light. Its presence invites contemplation, reverence, and wonder, urging those who encounter it to reflect on the delicate balance between illumination and shadow, knowledge and mystery, and the enduring human quest to shape, control, and cherish the light. Even now, when scholars examine it, when tourists marvel at its aged bronze and faintly flickering flame, or when artists attempt to capture its form and aura, the lantern retains a sense of agency, a quiet power that transcends explanation. It stands as a reminder that some creations are not merely objects, but vessels, not merely tools but conduits, not merely art but living history, capable of reshaping perception, influencing emotion, and inspiring awe across the ages. And so, the lantern that ate darkness continues to shine, to fascinate, and to whisper its ancient bronze-lit secrets, inviting all who encounter it to pause, to wonder, and to imagine the worlds it has illuminated and the shadows it has consumed, carrying with it the weight of centuries and the promise of enduring illumination. The tapestry that sang battles. In the vast halls of imperial China, where the scent of incense mingled with the weight of history, there existed a tapestry unlike any other, a creation so intricate, so alive, that it seemed to pulse with the echoes of past conflicts and the whispers of long-forgotten warriors. Known to scholars and storytellers as the tapestry that sang battles, this exquisite piece of silk was more than a mere decoration, it was a chronicle, a living archive woven from thread and spirit, capturing the essence of war, honor, strategy, and human emotion across centuries. The tapestry was commissioned during the reign of a particularly ambitious emperor, a ruler who sought not only to celebrate the victories of his ancestors, but also to instill in his court the lessons of vigilance, courage, and discipline. Silk, the most precious material of the time, was chosen for its durability, its sheen, and its symbolic purity. Master weavers, who had trained for decades under the strictest apprenticeship, were entrusted with the task of transforming strands of dyed silk into a tableau of battle so vivid that it would seem to breathe and move before the eyes of any observer. Their workshops, lit by lanterns and filled with the rhythmic hum of looms, were sanctuaries of patience and precision, where each stitch carried meaning, each knot told a story, and each color conveyed emotion. The tapestry's dimensions were monumental, stretching nearly the length of a grand hall, with intricate panels depicting not only famous battles, but also the quiet moments that preceded and followed them. Generals poring over maps, soldiers sharpening their weapons in anticipation, archers lining the battlements, and banners rippling in imagined winds. What made it truly remarkable, however, was the way the tapestry seemed to resonate beyond the visual. Visitors to the imperial court often described an uncanny sensation, as if the battles themselves were being replayed through the tapestry's threads. Some spoke of hearing faint echoes of marching feet, the clash of swords, or the distant roar of command, though no physical sound existed. Others described a shiver that ran down the spine, as though the tapestry was capable of invoking the adrenaline, fear, and valor of warriors long dead. Legend suggests that the tapestry was infused with rituals and blessings, sacred threads intertwined with the silk, possibly imbued with alchemical compounds or mystical incantations meant to preserve the energy of the battles it depicted. Some historians speculate that it was not magic in the traditional sense, but the intense emotional and psychological investment of the weavers and the imperial court that lent the tapestry its almost supernatural aura. The choice of colors, the gradations of thread, and the meticulous attention to every gesture of every figure created a visual language that transcended mere artistry, conveying a visceral sense of motion, urgency, and life. Each scene within the tapestry was more than illustration, it was storytelling. From the chaos of cavalry charges to the tension of hand-to-hand combat, the tapestry guided the observer through every strategic maneuver, every heroic action, and every tragic misstep. Bird's-eye perspectives alternated with close-up depictions, giving both macro and micro views of the same conflict, allowing viewers to understand the flow of battle while simultaneously connecting with the individual experiences of soldiers. Even the terrain was rendered with astonishing fidelity. Rivers curved realistically, mountains loomed with shadow and depth, and forests appeared dense and impenetrable. The silk sheen captured the light in such a way that the scenes seemed to shift subtly as the viewer moved, creating the illusion of movement and amplifying the sense that the battles were alive. Over centuries, the tapestry became more than a record of warfare. It became a tool for reflection and instruction. Generals would study it to glean insights into tactics and formations. Philosophers would contemplate it as a meditation on human conflict and morality, and poets would draw inspiration from its narrative to craft verses that captured the glory and tragedy of martial life. The tapestry seemed to possess a dual consciousness. It celebrated victories while cautioning against hubris, it glorified courage while mourning loss, and it reminded all who gazed upon it that war, while a spectacle of skill and bravery, exacted a heavy toll upon both victors and the vanquished. Its preservation was as remarkable as its creation. Despite centuries of dynastic change, political upheaval, and natural disaster, the tapestry endured, carefully stored in climate-controlled chambers of palaces and temples, protected by layers of lacquered boxes and silk wrappings. Occasionally, it was displayed during special ceremonies or anniversaries of historic battles, and witnesses consistently reported the same uncanny phenomena: a heightened sense of presence, fleeting auditory impressions, and a profound emotional resonance, as if the tapestry had absorbed the very soul of the conflicts it depicted, and continued to radiate that energy outward. The artistry of the tapestry was unparalleled. Every figure's expression conveyed emotion with extraordinary subtlety. Determination, fear, pain, triumph, and camaraderie could be read in the smallest details: the tilt of a helmet, the curve of a lip, the tension in a hand gripping a sword. Animals were rendered with equal care. Horses strained against their harnesses, war dogs lunged mid-leap, and birds soared over battlegrounds, capturing both the grandeur and the chaos of each moment. Even the smallest elements, such as a falling leaf or a shaft of sunlight breaking through clouds, were meticulously executed, creating a tapestry that felt alive and ever-changing, as though the battles it contained were perpetually in motion. Modern studies of the tapestry reveal astonishing technical mastery. The weavers employed advanced techniques that allowed for shading, depth, and perspective uncommon in textiles of the time. The interplay of silk threads of varying thicknesses, the layering of colored strands, and the subtle weaving of metallic threads for highlights all contributed to an optical effect that made the scenes appear almost three-dimensional. This sophisticated approach created an immersive experience for anyone fortunate enough to study the work up close, making the tapestry not only a historical record, but also an object of profound aesthetic wonder. Its influence spread beyond the imperial court. Traveling emissaries and scholars took knowledge of the tapestry to other regions of China and beyond, inspiring the creation of similar works, though none achieved the same level of detail or power. Its reputation grew into legend, and stories circulated that the tapestry could even predict the outcomes of conflicts if interpreted correctly, as if the threads themselves contained the memory of human endeavor, guiding the perceptive observer toward insight, caution, or inspiration. Throughout its long existence, the tapestry survived thefts, attempts at destruction, and natural disasters. Each time it was threatened, it seemed to find a way to endure, preserved by caretakers who understood not only its artistic and historical value, but also the almost spiritual significance it held. To gaze upon it was to experience a bridge across time, connecting the present with the distant past, and to witness the energy, discipline, and creativity of generations that came before. The tapestry that sang battles is not merely a textile, it is a testament to the power of human memory, the depth of creative expression, and the enduring fascination with conflict and heroism. It reminds us that while battles are fought and forgotten, their stories, woven in threads of silk and colored with intent, can persist, resonating across centuries and illuminating the human condition in ways that words alone could never capture. Its legacy continues, whispering to all who observe it. The past is never truly gone, and every thread holds the weight of history, valor, and the relentless march of time. To this day, the tapestry is revered not only as an object of historical significance, but as a source of inspiration, meditation, and awe. Scholars, artists, and visitors alike marvel at its ability to merge form, function, and narrative, creating an artifact that transcends mere storytelling. It stands as a symbol of human ingenuity, patience, and the profound desire to capture fleeting moments and immortalize them in art. The tapestry that sang battles continues to sing, its threads vibrating with the echoes of the past, inviting all who encounter it to listen, to reflect, and to understand the lives, struggles, and triumphs of those who came before. In this way, it is more than silk, more than craft. It is a conduit, a vessel of history, and a living chronicle that defies time itself, reminding humanity that stories, once woven, can resonate forever, carrying the songs of battles long past into the present and beyond, awaiting those who are willing to hear, observe, and be moved. The stone that whispered kings. The stone that whispered kings had rested in the shadow of Angkor for centuries, silent and yet impossibly alive in its own way. Carved from the reddish sandstone that the rivers of Cambodia had carried for millennia, it bore the intricate likeness of kings long forgotten by history, each chisel mark a testament to devotion, power, and the fleeting nature of human ambition. When you first set eyes on it, the sculpture seems inert, unmoving, yet there is a presence about it that makes the air around it feel charged, almost vibrating with an energy that is hard to define. Locals often spoke of the way it seemed to watch those who approached it, its gaze neither accusatory nor welcoming, but deliberate, as if it were cataloging each visitor in an unseen ledger of memory. No one knew exactly who commissioned the sculpture, though many scholars suspected it was part of the Grand Court of Angkor Wat, a creation meant to immortalize a king whose reign had long been erased from the annals of time. The details carved into the stone suggest a figure of immense authority, adorned with ceremonial regalia that spoke of divine right, of kingship sanctioned by gods who themselves had long slipped from collective memory. The folds of the robe, the intricate headdress, the delicate yet commanding features, all hinted at someone of profound importance, yet when historians tried to link it to known rulers, no records matched. It became, over time, a puzzle of heritage and myth, a riddle carved in solid stone. The locals had their own stories. Some said that when the moon was full, the sculpture would whisper fragments of old royal decrees, remnants of rituals, or names of ministers long dead. Children were warned not to linger too long near it, lest they hear secrets too heavy for young ears. Traders and travelers passing through the area often claimed that on quiet nights, when the jungle itself seemed to hush in anticipation, they could hear faint echoes, almost like distant chanting or the rustle of silk robes moving across temple floors. Whether it was the wind or something else entirely, no one could say for certain. The stone had become not just a piece of art, but a living repository of history, memory, and possibly even something beyond comprehension. For centuries, the sculpture remained in relative isolation, tucked away from the main thoroughfares of Angkor. Monks occasionally came to meditate before it, whispering prayers that blended seamlessly with the ambient hum of the surrounding forest. The figure's serene expression seemed to accept these offerings of attention without judgment, as if it had been designed not only to command respect, but to receive contemplation, reflection, and silent devotion. There was a sense that the sculpture had been aware, in some ineffable way, of the flow of time, the cycles of empires rising and falling, and the inevitability of decay. Even as stones crumbled around it, and trees crept closer with each passing century, it endured, patient and unyielding, like a sentinel of history. Archaeologists who first studied the sculpture were struck by its craftsmanship. The Khmer artisans of the era were already known for their remarkable skill, yet this piece seemed to transcend even that reputation. Every minute detail was painstakingly rendered. The texture of hair carved in near imperceptible grooves, the delicate ornaments that seemed to balance perfectly without modern adhesives, the subtle expression that changed depending on the angle from which it was viewed. Under certain lighting, the eyes appeared almost lifelike, and some visitors swore that the gaze followed them across the room, a phenomenon that even modern optical theory could not fully explain. In a world where everything seemed transitory, here was a permanence that was both inspiring and unnerving. But beyond its artistry, the stone had a story that entwined legend and history. Ancient manuscripts referenced a statue that held the voice of kings, though it was never clear whether these texts spoke metaphorically or literally. Some suggested that the sculpture was intended as a vessel for the souls of deceased rulers, a method of preserving their wisdom and authority beyond death. Others argued that it had been used in ceremonies that sought to communicate with ancestors or to forecast the fates of kingdoms yet to come. Every theory was tantalizing but incomplete, leaving gaps that only amplified the sculpture's mystique. Even today, as researchers continue to decipher inscriptions and examine the sandstone under advanced imaging techniques, the full purpose of the sculpture remains elusive. Visitors to the site often report a sense of uncanny familiarity, as though the stone recognizes something within them. Scholars theorize that this could be a result of its balanced symmetry, which naturally attracts the human eye, creating a subconscious impression of awareness. Locals, however, insist that it is something more, something ancient and alive. Stories persist of travelers who have felt compelled to kneel before it, even when no rituals were required, of whispers in the night that seem to issue directly from the stone itself. Whether these experiences are psychological, spiritual, or genuinely supernatural, they contribute to a sense of the sculpture as more than mere stone, an object suspended between worlds, a medium through which the past communicates with the present. Over time, conservationists have taken great pains to preserve the sculpture. The sandstone is vulnerable to the monsoon rains that sweep through Cambodia, and exposure to humidity threatens to erode the delicate features. Protective measures have been implemented, yet access remains partly open, allowing the curious and the devout alike to approach it, to feel the weight of its gaze and the resonance of its presence. Researchers use every tool at their disposal: 3D scanning, chemical analysis, digital modeling, but even with modern technology, the stone retains an aura that defies full understanding. It is both a historical artifact and a living enigma, a reminder that some creations transcend time, culture, and even human comprehension. Perhaps most compelling are the accounts of those who claim to have heard the kings themselves speak through the stone. These narratives are difficult to verify, yet they persist across generations. Travelers, monks, and even skeptics report hearing whispers that seem to convey guidance, warnings, or simply the echo of authority from a time long past. Some describe these whispers as melodic, others as stern, others as barely audible intonations that fade when approached too closely. It is as if the sculpture is a vessel for memory, preserving fragments of leadership and human experience in a way that no text or recording could ever achieve. The stone has become a bridge between eras, a touchstone for reflection, awe, and sometimes fear. The deeper one studies the Khmer culture and the intricacies of Angkorian art, the more one realizes that the stone is not merely an isolated object. It is part of a network of spiritual and political significance, connected to temples, water reservoirs, and ceremonial spaces. Its placement was no accident. It would have been carefully considered, aligning with cardinal points, solar cycles, or spiritual pathways. Every aspect of the sculpture, from its dimensions to its orientation, speaks of an understanding of the cosmos and the divine, a philosophy that linked governance, religion, and the natural world. To hold such a creation in your presence is to witness the embodiment of an entire worldview, etched into sandstone with precision and care. And yet, the stone remains enigmatic. Scholars debate the identity of the king it depicts, the specific rituals it might have been involved in, and the reason why it was endowed with such extraordinary presence. Some argue it is a composite of idealized kingship, rather than a portrait of a single ruler, designed to communicate the very essence of authority and divine favor. Others suggest it was part of a broader metaphysical practice, intended to ensure the continuity of the empire through spiritual resonance rather than political means. Every new study, every fresh hypothesis, only deepens the fascination, revealing layers of meaning that may never be fully deciphered. In its quiet way, the stone teaches patience and reverence. Those who linger feel a sense of temporal suspension, as if the world around it slows to accommodate the gravity of its history. The texture under fingertips, the subtle play of light across carved features, the faint echo of imagined voices, all combine to create an experience that is immersive, meditative, and profoundly humbling. One leaves with an impression of vastness, not just of physical space, but of time, of human endeavor, and of the enduring power of creation to communicate across centuries. Even today, the stone remains a centerpiece for both academic study and spiritual reflection. It is an object that invites questions rather than answers, curiosity rather than certainty. The guardians of the site encourage visitors to approach with quiet respect, to listen, to observe, and perhaps, if fortunate, to perceive the faint echoes of kings long gone. It is not merely a relic, it is a living testament, a whispering stone that bridges past and present, inviting all who come near to contemplate the impermanence of power, the persistence of memory, and the profound mysteries of human history. And so, the stone that whispered kings endures. It has outlasted centuries of conquest, climate, and human indifference, standing as a silent yet resonant witness to the passage of time. Its presence is a reminder that some creations do more than survive. They communicate, provoke thought, inspire awe, and challenge our understanding of what it means to leave a mark on the world. In every curve, in every shadow, in every imagined whisper, it continues to tell a story that is at once intimate and universal, an enduring legacy of a civilization that knew how to speak in stone and how to make the past unforgettable. The key that sang silence. The key that sang silence had rested for centuries within the winding canals and shadowed corridors of Venice, seemingly ordinary at first glance, yet imbued with a presence that drew the attention of anyone who lingered too long near it. Carved from pure gold, its surface caught the light in a way that seemed almost sentient, reflecting back not just the room around it but hints of history, whispers of past hands that had held it, and the weight of secrets accumulated over generations. In the labyrinthine heart of the city, where the waters lapped silently against ancient stone walls, this key had a story few could trace fully, yet all who encountered it felt compelled to recognize its quiet power. The origins of the key were obscured by time. Some scholars believed it belonged to a forgotten Venetian noble family, one whose influence had quietly guided the politics of the Republic behind closed doors. Others suggested it was tied to a clandestine guild of alchemists, a key to chambers where the boundaries between the material and the mystical had been explored in ways Venice herself might never reveal. What was certain, however, was that the key had been revered, feared and sought after by generations, yet rarely used, almost as if it held the potential to unlock something beyond mere doors, a resonance of silence, memory, or perhaps even destiny. The key's design was deceptively simple, yet every detail betrayed exquisite craftsmanship. Its teeth were meticulously shaped, more symbolic than functional, resembling tiny glyphs whose meaning had been lost to time. The bow, circular and smooth, bore intricate filigree reminiscent of the Gothic and Renaissance artistry of Venice itself, a bridge between eras and aesthetics. Gold of such purity was rare, but the key seemed to radiate more than wealth. It radiated significance. Its surface, touched repeatedly by fingers over centuries, held the warmth of human ambition, whispered fears, and the faintest trace of devotion. Many who held it reported a sensation akin to a muted vibration, as though the key itself had absorbed and contained the echoes of countless deeds, intentions, and confessions. Legends grew around the key, as stories often do in a city of canals and shadowed alleys, where reality and myth frequently intertwined. It was said that in the silence of certain Venetian nights, one could hear the faint hum of the key, a sound imperceptible to most but unmistakable to those attuned to history, memory, and the subtle currents of the city. Monks, travelers, and thieves alike claimed that in the presence of the key, the air itself seemed to thicken with unspoken words, and that secrets, both theirs and those long buried, had a way of surfacing in dreams and whispers. Some even believed the key had a consciousness, an awareness of the hands that sought to wield it, and a judgment that was neither benevolent nor malevolent, but absolute, silent in its deliberation. Its journey through history was as labyrinthine as the city itself. During the height of the Venetian Republic, it was reportedly kept in the private chambers of a doge, passed from hand to hand in ceremonies too secretive for public knowledge. Records are scarce, fragmented, and sometimes contradictory, leaving more questions than answers. It disappeared from official accounts, only to resurface centuries later in the possession of collectors and scholars, always accompanied by stories of inexplicable phenomena. Some claimed that doors it touched remained sealed, not by physical mechanism but by an unseen will, and that the key would hum, vibrate, or glow faintly as if acknowledging the attempt. Others swore that it could open not just doors but pathways of thought, moments of insight, or glimpses of the past, though such experiences were as ephemeral as the morning mist along the canals. Local Venetians often tell tales of the key's mysterious influence. A gondolier might remark, while passing the palaces of old noble families, that the key was present even when it was not visible, shaping fortunes and misfortunes, leaving traces of intention in the decisions of men long gone. In certain libraries and archives, researchers who have handled the key report vivid visions of masked figures in grand halls, candlelight flickering across marble floors, and the quiet rustle of silks and whispers carrying over the water. These experiences were not always coherent, yet the emotional imprint was unmistakable: awe, dread, curiosity, and the undeniable sense of touching history in its most intimate form. The key also became central to numerous Venetian legends surrounding alchemy, secrecy, and forbidden knowledge. Some texts allude to it being a master key for a hidden vault of arcane manuscripts, alchemical tools, and ritual artifacts, accessible only to those deemed worthy by the key itself. It was said that the key chose its bearer, rather than the other way around, and that those unworthy would find it impossibly heavy, its grooves painful in their hands, its hymn of a warning rather than an invitation. In this way, the key acted as a guardian, a silent sentinel that ensured the knowledge it could grant was never abused, and that its power remained veiled in the interplay of patience, understanding, and respect. Physical examinations of the key revealed further marvels. Even under magnification, the metal bore no imperfections, and the etchings appeared to shift subtly when viewed from different angles. Some scientists postulated that the key had been treated with an ancient technique to ensure longevity and luster, though no formula has ever been replicated successfully. The key seemed to defy simple categorization, straddling the line between utilitarian object, work of art, and mystical artifact. Its continued survival through wars, floods, and the relentless encroachments of time added to its mystique, leaving a trail of fascination and speculation in its wake. For the modern visitor, encountering the key is to confront the intersection of human history and human imagination. Scholars and casual observers alike find themselves drawn to it, compelled to trace its shape, feel its weight, and ponder the lives it has touched. The sense of continuity is almost tangible, centuries of hands, hearts, and minds, all leaving subtle imprints upon the same golden surface. It is a silent witness to ambition, greed, love, devotion, and sometimes despair, a single object carrying the echoes of countless human experiences. Yet for all its allure, the key remains fundamentally enigmatic. Its exact purpose, its full history, and the extent of its abilities are unknowable in totality. It resists classification and defies explanation, a tangible symbol of mystery that challenges those who attempt to contain it within narrative or chronology. The key does not simply unlock doors, it unlocks questions, prompts reflection, and fosters the sense that some knowledge is meant to be approached with caution, reverence, and humility. It is as much a philosophical object as it is a historical one, inviting each observer to confront their own curiosity, desire, and understanding. Over time, the key has inspired artists, writers, and dreamers. Its presence has appeared in sketches, paintings, and stories that attempt to capture, in ink or pigment, the resonance it seems to exude naturally. Even when translated into art, however, the key retains its ineffable quality. It is more than a subject, more than a symbol. It is an experience, a moment of encounter with something ancient, luminous, and profoundly silent. Each representation serves as a reminder that history is not only written in documents in stone, but also preserved in objects that carry a life of their own, silently whispering truths to those who listen. And so, the key that sang silence continues to dwell in Venice, bridging centuries of human endeavor, secrecy, and wonder. It reminds us that some objects are not merely tools or ornaments, they are vessels of memory, power, and sometimes, the very essence of mystery. To hold it, to see it, or even to contemplate its presence, is to participate in a continuum of experience that stretches from the hands of its makers to our own, a silent song that resonates across time, whispering to those who dare to listen, ponder, and wonder. The drum that carried shadows. The drum that carried shadows rested for centuries in the dense rainforests and winding rivers of the Congo, a vessel of sound, memory, and mystery, imbued with the spirits of the land and the voices of generations long past. Its wooden body, carved from a single trunk of ebony, had been shaped not only with the precision of a master artisan, but with the reverence reserved for objects believed to hold more than just musical resonance. The drum was not merely an instrument, it was a living record, a conduit between the tangible and the ethereal, between the community and the spirits that lingered unseen in the forest, the air heavy with humidity and the scent of earth and growth. The drum's surface, made from carefully cured animal hide, bore the faint traces of countless hands. Each groove, each scratch, was a testament to ceremonies performed, invocations called, and energies released into the night. Those who touched it claimed to feel a subtle vibration, almost imperceptible yet insistent, as if the drum itself remembered the rhythms it had carried and awaited the next summoning. It was said that in certain hours, when the forest was cloaked in mist and the moonlight barely touched the undergrowth, the drum would emit a low, resonant hum on its own, a sound that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the earth itself. Its origins were intertwined with the spiritual practices of the Congo's ancient peoples. Shamans and ritualists revered the drum as a tool for communication with the ancestors, a bridge between life and death, between the living and the unseen forces that guided the world. Stories persisted that the drum could carry the shadows of those who had passed, not as phantoms but as impressions, subtle echoes of their presence that lingered in the vibration of its wood and skin. The shadows were not visible in the conventional sense. They were felt, experienced as a resonance in the chest, a whisper in the ears, a shiver along the spine that no words could fully describe. The drum's journey through time was as complex as the network of rivers and forests it had traveled alongside. Passed down through generations of ritual masters, it had been a centerpiece in ceremonies marking life, death, harvest, and the cyclical patterns of the natural world. It survived wars, colonization, and the encroachment of modernity, yet it retained its purpose and presence. Each hand that held it, each ritual that sounded from it, added a layer of memory and energy, reinforcing its role as a repository of history and spiritual authority. The craftsmanship of the drum itself is remarkable. Its body, hollowed from a single trunk, resonates with a richness that cannot be replicated. The hide was carefully selected from specific animals, treated with oils and natural substances to preserve its elasticity and tonality. The tension was adjusted with precise chords, each knot tied not only for structural stability but to honor the rituals for which it would be used. The drum's aesthetic was both functional and symbolic, decorated with carvings that represented tribal myths, protective symbols, and depictions of spirits known only to those initiated in the ancient traditions. The legends surrounding the drum are numerous and profound. One of the most enduring stories tells of a shaman who, during a particularly harsh dry season, used the drum to call forth shadows of ancestors, seeking guidance to bring rain. The ceremony lasted 3 nights, with rhythmic patterns so precise and fervent that the elders claimed the shadows themselves danced in response. By the 3rd dawn, clouds had gathered, and rain fell, nourishing the earth and proving, to those present, the potency of the drum's connection to unseen forces. Stories like these gave the drum its reputation, a sacred object capable of bridging the impossible and influencing the natural world in ways that seemed both magical and deeply real. The drum also became a symbol of unity and community. During gatherings, its sound guided dances, prayers, and collective movement, reinforcing social bonds and the spiritual identity of the tribe. Each beat resonated through the forest, a reminder that the living were intertwined with the land, the spirits, and the memories of those who had come before. Even outsiders who witnessed the ceremonies reported an almost hypnotic experience, a sensation of being drawn into the rhythm, the shadows, and the sacred energy that seemed to emanate from the drum itself. As European explorers and collectors entered the Congo, the drum attracted attention for its beauty and the aura of mystery surrounding it. Many sought to remove it from its context, to possess it as a museum piece or a curiosity, yet the drum resisted being reduced to a mere object. Those who attempted to separate it from its spiritual environment often reported unease, inexplicable disturbances, or feelings of being watched. Local traditions maintained that the drum should only be handled by those trained in its use, for it carried the weight of centuries of ritual and the presence of shadows that could not be ignored. Even today, the drum that carried shadows continues to inspire fascination among historians, ethnomusicologists, and spiritual practitioners. Modern examinations reveal the extraordinary acoustics, the depth of resonance, and the complex interplay between material, design, and energy. Researchers attempt to capture its sound, yet recordings never fully convey the visceral experience of hearing it in situ, the subtle vibrations that seem to move through both body and soul. Those fortunate enough to witness a performance describe it as a living entity, responsive, aware, and infinitely patient, ready to share its secrets with those willing to listen. The drum's symbolism extends beyond the ritual itself. It represents the delicate balance between human intention and natural forces, the visible and invisible, the temporal and the eternal. In its silence, it holds tension and potential. In its sound, it carries memory and prophecy. The shadows it bears are not mere illusions, they are markers of history, echoing choices, consequences, and the ongoing interplay of life and death. To engage with the drum is to engage with time itself. To recognize that objects can be more than tools, they can be storytellers, teachers, and guardians. Legends assert that the drum is never truly alone. Even when stored, unused, or hidden from view, it carries the residual energy of all who have touched it, all who have listened, and all who have danced to its rhythms. It is said that a gentle tap on its skin in solitude can evoke memories of ceremonies never personally witnessed, glimpses of the forest alive with movement, and shadows that flit along the periphery of vision. This extraordinary quality makes the drum not merely a relic of the past, but a living bridge, inviting each generation to connect with forces beyond immediate perception. Its aesthetic beauty also complements its spiritual and auditory significance. Carvings of ancestral faces, spirits, and symbolic patterns encircle the drum, each detail chosen with intention. No line is random, each curve tells a story, each etching holds meaning. Even the wear on the drum, polished by decades of hands, speaks of devotion, respect, and continuity. The drum is simultaneously a work of art, a functional instrument, and a vessel of spiritual resonance, defying easy categorization. The drum that carried shadows ultimately challenges our understanding of history, art, and ritual. It is a reminder that objects can embody memory, spirit, and intention, carrying within them stories far beyond their physical presence. To hold the drum is to feel the weight of generations, to hear the echoes of rituals performed under moonlight, and to acknowledge the silent participation of shadows that endure through time. It teaches that history is not solely written in texts and stone, but also in sound, in vibration, and in objects that resonate with the lives and energies of those who came before. Even for those who have never set foot in the Congo, the drum offers a journey into human consciousness, ritual, and the mystical. Its presence invites reflection, quiet attention, and respect for traditions that honor the invisible, the ephemeral, and the sacred. Each beat it produces is not just a note, but a story, a memory, a shadow carried forward across centuries. It reminds us that music, spirituality, and art are intertwined, and that some objects, like the drum that carried shadows, are far more than what they appear to be. In its silence and in its song, the drum continues to exist as it always has, a guardian of shadows, a vessel of memory, and a testament to the enduring power of ritual, rhythm, and human connection. The drum does not simply echo sound, it echoes life, history, and the profound mystery of the unseen forces that shape our world, offering anyone who listens a rare glimpse into the continuum of time, spirit, and story. The orb that counted souls. The story begins beneath the gray light of a sky too heavy to show its color, a mist-thick morning in the southern English countryside, where time moves as if afraid to wake something old. The cottage that housed the orb was small, half-eaten by ivy, standing at the edge of a wood whose name had long been forgotten. Its walls leaned slightly inward, as if the air itself pressed upon them. Inside, the light was dim even at noon, and it was there, in the center of a rough-hewn oak table, that the crystal orb rested, perfectly round, perfectly still. No one knew where it had come from. The old caretaker, a quiet man named Edwin Harthrow, claimed he had found it wrapped in black cloth beneath the floorboards, after a winter storm had torn apart the kitchen. He'd meant to throw it away. It was cold to the touch, unnaturally so. But something in him hesitated. Instead, he had set it on the table, and for reasons he could never quite explain, he never moved it again. At first it seemed like nothing more than a beautiful object. It caught candlelight and broke it into soft liquid ripples across the low ceiling. When visitors came, though they rarely did, they would ask if it was glass. Edwin would shake his head and say, quietly, "It's heavier than glass. Feels older than it looks." Then came the whispers. He began hearing faint murmurs in the night, too soft to understand, too near to ignore. He thought it was the wind through the trees, but when he checked outside, the woods were silent. The sound was inside the cottage, low and rhythmic, almost like the breathing of someone sleeping too close to his ear. The orb, of course, did not move, but each morning, Edwin found the candles burned lower than they should have been, and the air in the room felt thinner, as if the world itself were slightly drained. He told no one, not even the priest in the next village. The priest had enough to worry about: sick cattle, children born weak, and the church bell that rang on windless nights. Still, curiosity became stronger than fear. Edwin began writing down what he saw. He wrote that the orb glowed faintly before rain. He wrote that it turned cloudy during funerals, and once, on the anniversary of his wife's death, he swore he saw her reflection inside it, not as she was when she died, but as she had been when they first met, smiling faintly, lips moving as if in mid-speech. After that, Edwin stopped lighting candles. He would sit in the dark, watching the orb reflect what little moonlight entered through the cracks in the shutters. Weeks passed. He began noticing patterns. The whispers grew clearer when people died nearby. An old shepherd in the valley, a child in the village. The night before their deaths, the orb seemed to hum faintly, a vibration that traveled through the wood of the table, and on the morning after, it would be warm. He did not tell anyone this, but others began to notice him changing. The baker's wife said Edwin looked washed thin, as though his shadow weighed more than his body. The village doctor remarked that his eyes had lost their color. He no longer came to market. He ate little, spoke less. Then one day, a young scholar arrived from Oxford, a man named Henry Corbin, carrying a satchel full of notebooks and curiosity sharper than sense. He had heard rumors about an artifact found in the countryside, one unlike any crystal yet known. He offered Edwin money, but the old man refused. Still, Henry lingered, determined to see it. When he finally did, the scholar forgot to speak. The orb seemed to pull the light toward it, bending it, swallowing it, until the whole room looked smaller. He reached out, meaning to touch it, and Edwin caught his wrist. "Don't," he said softly. "It listens." Henry laughed nervously. "It listens." But Edwin didn't smile. "To us. It knows our number." The scholar left that evening, but he didn't make it far. At dawn, a farmhand found his horse wandering near the river. Henry's body lay a few yards away, his face calm, as though he'd fallen asleep mid-step. His journal, water-stained but mostly intact, contained a final entry. "It hums like a heart, like it's counting." After that, people stayed away from the cottage. Months passed. The orchard overgrew. Ivy swallowed the walls, and soon the cottage was little more than a story parents used to keep children from wandering into the woods. When a group of surveyors came through in the late 1800s, they found the cottage gone entirely, except for a single stone table still standing in a hollow of trees. And on that table, half sunk in moss and lichen, rested the crystal orb. They took it to London. It passed through collectors, museums, private hands. Its surface was catalogued, measured, polished, yet it never lost that faint inner shimmer, a pulse too soft to capture in photographs. And in every room where it was kept, strange things were said to happen. Clocks would drift out of sync, People would forget what they were saying halfway through a sentence. Visitors sometimes felt counted, as though the air around them was silently keeping track of how many breaths they had left. It was then the museum staff began to call it by a name that stuck, the soul counter. By the early 20th century, it had been locked away in storage, yet even there, in the dark, security guards swore they heard faint rhythmic tapping, like knuckles on glass. When they checked the cameras, the feed would blur at the center, a soft white pulse moving within the orb's core. Some said it wasn't counting deaths, it was recording lives. Others whispered that it had once belonged to a priest of a forgotten order, who believed every soul had weight, and that this sphere could measure it, and perhaps it does. For every time a name is removed from the museum's roster, retired, resigned, or worse, someone always swears they heard the sound that night, a single soft click, as though another soul had just been added to the tally. The crate that arrived at the British Museum was not on the official manifest. It bore no seal, only a faded shipping mark from Southampton, and a note in an old hand that read simply, "Keep sealed, do not display." The curator on duty, a woman named Margaret Yates, had seen stranger things in her time, mislabeled mummies, forgotten reliquaries, even a shrunken head that arrived in a hat box. But something about the crate unsettled her. The wood was damp, as though it had been stored underground. She opened it anyway. Inside lay a single object, wrapped in layers of linen and straw. The moment her hands brushed against it, she felt the cold, sharp and deliberate, like ice that wanted to stay remembered. When she unwrapped the final cloth, the orb met her gaze with a stillness that made her throat tighten. She'd seen it before, in an archival sketch from the late 1800s, labeled Uncatalogued Crystal Sphere, Southern England. The notes beside it had been crossed out, every line blacked over but one. The counting continues. That night, she locked it in a climate-controlled room with the other unclassified artifacts. But as she left, she thought she saw a flicker inside it. Not a reflection, not light, but movement, like breath trapped in glass. By morning, the sensors in that room had failed. The temperature reading dropped to 0, then rose to match her pulse as she entered. The orb sat untouched on its pedestal, faintly fogged. Yet the condensation wasn't on the outside. It pressed outward from within, like something exhaling against its cage. Margaret brought in a physicist named Dr. Howard Bell, a man who didn't believe in anything he couldn't weigh. He ran spectral analyses, density tests, and infrared scans. The results contradicted each other. The orb registered as solid quartz in one test, hollow in another. It refracted light in ways no known material should. And then there was the sound. When exposed to pure tones, a tuning fork, a violin note, even the hum of a fluorescent bulb, it produced a faint resonance, not an echo, a response, as though it were trying to harmonize. Dr. Bell wrote in his notes, appears to be converting sound waves into rhythmic pulses, approx 72 per minute, corresponds to human heart rate. Margaret read that line 3 times, then she locked the report away. Within a week, Dr. Bell stopped coming to the lab. His wife found him sitting upright in his study, eyes open, expression peaceful. His wristwatch had stopped at 11:38 p.m., and on the table beside him was a slip of paper. One word was written in ink, counted. The museum sealed the room again. They labeled the object unstable and stored it in sub-basement vault 3B, next to fragments of meteorite glass and unidentified burial stones. But rumors travel even through stone walls. Night guards began whispering that they heard voices from the vault, quiet, steady counting in languages none could place. Visitors who passed the lower galleries claimed to feel observed, as if someone unseen was quietly measuring them. One evening, during a power outage, Margaret returned to the vault alone with a lantern. The emergency lights flickered, throwing her shadow across the concrete floor. She stopped before the orb's case. It was glowing again, soft, like the first light before dawn, and inside, she saw movement. Not reflections, not tricks of the glass, faces, faint, like ripples seen through water. Some were calm, some wide-eyed, some mouthing words she couldn't hear. They faded, and returned with every beat of her heart. She stepped closer, the glow brightened, the air hummed. The sound wasn't external, it came from within her own chest, her heartbeat syncing with the rhythm pulsing in the orb. She whispered, "What are you?" and the hum stuttered, just once, before resuming, perfectly in time. She didn't tell anyone about that moment, but she began to dream differently after it. Every night, the same sequence. Endless hallways, lined with glass orbs just like this one, each filled with a faint drifting light. Voices whispered numbers, rising and falling like tides. In the dream, she always reached the end of the corridor, and there, in the last orb, she would see herself, asleep, unmoving, and the whisper would pause before saying her name. When she woke, her wristwatch had stopped again. Months later, the museum quietly transferred the orb to a private collection. The record states it was sent to an unnamed benefactor for long-term preservation. No further notes exist. The crate disappeared somewhere between Dover and Antwerp, but stories linger. A collector in Brussels claimed to own a living crystal that fogged when visitors entered the room. A watchmaker in Lyon told of a sphere that ticks without gears. And an old archivist in London swore he saw Margaret's reflection in a window years after her death, her lips moving as if still counting. Today, a few grainy photos remain. In them the orb looks unremarkable, a sphere of clear stone, no larger than an apple. But those who have stood near it say it hums faintly when you whisper to it, and that the air around it feels charged, alive. And sometimes, only sometimes, if you stand very still, you can hear a sound beneath your heartbeat, a low, patient rhythm, as though something, somewhere, is quietly keeping score, not of time, but of you. Every relic holds a story, and every mystery waits for someone curious enough to listen. If you enjoyed this journey through Unearthed Secrets, please subscribe, hit like, and tell us which artifact fascinated you most. Until next time, keep your eyes open. History still whispers beneath the dust.